I thought I knew my best friend, Mark. I really did. We'd been inseparable since kindergarten. The kind of friends who finish each other's sentences, who know every embarrassing story, every secret. At least, that's what I believed. But one Tuesday evening, everything I thought I knew about him, about our friendship, about my own life, was shattered by a knock on my door. Standing on my welcome mat was Detective Miller, a man with tired eyes and a grim set to his jaw. He was asking about Mark, specifically about his whereabouts last Friday night. I remember smiling, feeling a sense of relief. For once, I had a solid, easy answer for a detective. He was right here, I said confidently. We watched the game, ordered a pizza. He left around midnight. Simple. True. Except it wasn't. Mark hadn't been here last Friday. He'd called me that afternoon, his voice a little rushed. He said he was surprising his girlfriend, Sarah, for their anniversary and needed a cover story. It sounded sweet, romantic even. Just tell anyone who asks you were hanging out, he'd said. I didn't hesitate. That's what best friends do, right? You cover for each other. No questions asked. My confidence evaporated when Detective Miller slid a grainy photo across my coffee table. It was from a security camera. This is from last Friday night, he said, his voice flat. The night the CEO of Tech Global, Jonathan Crane, was murdered. The photo showed a man in a dark hoodie entering the lobby of a sleek, glass-fronted building. Even with the poor quality, I recognized him immediately. It was Mark. My blood turned to ice. What? ... What is this? I stammered. The detective didn't even look at me. He just pointed to the time stamp at the bottom of the image. 8:15 p.m. He then showed me another one. This time, it was Mark leaving the same building. The time stamp read 10:30 p.m. Exactly the window of time he was supposedly on my couch, yelling at the TV. Your friend lied to you, Mr. Evans, Detective Miller said, finally meeting my gaze, and he's been lying for a lot longer than you think. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of the impossible. Why would Mark be a Why would he lie to me about it? The detective leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Mark doesn't work as a financial analyst. He hasn't for 3 years. He's an undercover agent for the FBI. The words hit me like a physical blow. Undercover? The FBI. It sounded like something out of a movie, not something happening to my friend, the guy I played video games with. But then, like a floodgate opening, all the weird little inconsistencies from the past few years started pouring into my memory. The sudden, last-minute business trips to cities he couldn't name. The vague answers about his work projects, the way he'd sometimes get a call and have to leave immediately, his face a mask of stone. I chalked it up to stress, to a demanding job. But it wasn't a demanding job. It was a double life. I felt a sickening mix of betrayal and fear. My best friend, the person I trusted more than anyone, was a complete stranger. And now, he was the prime suspect in a high-profile murder case. That night, I drove to Mark's apartment, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't even know what I was going to say. How do you confront someone about a lie that enormous? When he opened the door, he looked exhausted. Before I could even speak, he saw the look on my face, and his shoulders slumped into feet. You know, he said. It wasn't a question. We sat in his living room, the one I'd been in 1,000 times before. But now it felt like a stranger's house. He told me everything. He explained he'd been investigating massive corporate espionage at Tech Global, a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government. The murdered CEO, Jonathan Crane, was his informant. He was about to hand over the final piece of evidence, a file that would blow the whole thing wide open. I went to meet him. Alexa, Mark said, his voice cracking. But when I got there, he was already gone. Someone else got to him first. It was set up, framed. Whoever killed Crane knew Mark was an agent, knew about the meeting, and used it to pin the murder on him. And they knew to use my alibi, Mark said, looking me straight in the eye. They know about you. A chill snaked down my spine. This wasn't just about Mark anymore. By lying for him, by being his alibi, I had unknowingly stepped into the middle of a secret war. I was a loose end. The very next morning, two men in crisp, dark suits paid me a visit at my office. They weren't cops. They flashed badges I didn't recognize and spoke with a chilling politeness. They didn't ask me about the murder. Instead, they showed me falsified bank statements and forged documents, all proving that Mark had been embezzling money from a shell corporation. It was a clear threat. They were building a case against him, a fake one, and they were showing me that they could just as easily build one against me. 2, they were telling me to back off, to forget what I knew. Panic set in. I had to warn Mark. I raced over to his apartment, my heart pounding against my ribs. But I was too late. The front door was ajar, the lock shattered. Inside, the place was a wreck. Furniture was overturned, drawers were pulled out, papers were scattered everywhere. It looked like a tornado had ripped through it. And Mark was gone. My eyes scanned the chaos, desperately searching for a clue, a sign, anything. And then I saw it, sitting perfectly placed in the middle of his kitchen counter. Untouched by the mess was a single photograph. It was an old picture of Mark and me, taken on a camping trip years ago. We were smiling, arms thrown around each other's shoulders. Scrawled across my face, in what looked like thick, red ink or blood were 2 words: "You're next." At that exact moment, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. The message was short and terrifyingly direct. "If you want to see a friend alive, bring the files to the warehouse district tonight at midnight. Gourmet. Alone. Files. What files?" I didn't have any files. I was an architect, not a spy. I knew nothing. This was Mark's world, not mine. But they didn't know that, or maybe they did, and this was all part of their trap. I had no files, no plan, and no one to turn to. The police thought I was a liar, covering for a murderer. The FBI Mark's people were nowhere to be found, and a shadowy group of killers thought I held the key to their downfall. Driving toward the dark, forgotten streets of the warehouse district that night, the city lights blurring through my tear-filled eyes, I realized one thing. This wasn't just about being a good friend anymore. This was about survival. My best friend had dragged me into the heart of a conspiracy, and the only person who had the answers was the same person I couldn't trust. The biggest mystery in my life wasn't who killed Jonathan Crane. It was the man I'd called my brother for 20 years, and I was driving headfirst into his world to get him back. The warehouse district was a graveyard of shadows, an eerie silence hanging heavy in the air. I killed the engine 2 blocks away, my heart doing a frantic drum solo against my ribs. Warehouse 7B. The text was simple, but every nerve in my body screamed, "Trap." Still, I went. For him. As I neared the massive, looming structure, a figure detached itself from the darkness. It was Mark, but not D. Mark one knew. He was pale, a fresh, angry cut slicing across his brow. "Alex, thank God you came," he rasped, his voice a frantic whisper as he pulled me into the shadows. "We don't have much time. Who did this? Who took you? What files are they talking about?" The questions tumbled out of me, a torrent of confusion and fear. Before he could utter a single word, the night was split in 2 by a pair of blinding headlights. Mark shoved me behind a reeking dumpster just as a menacing black SUV rolled to a stop. Its engine a low growl. "They're here," he breathed, his eyes wide with a terror I'd never seen before. "Listen carefully. There's a flash drive hidden behind the loose brick in my fireplace. It's got everything. Evidence that could bring down some very powerful people. They'll do anything to get it back." The SUV doors swung open, and 3 figures emerged, their silhouettes stark against the glare. My breath caught in my throat. Even in the dim light, I recognized one of them. Councilman Johnson, the same man who'd been all over the news yesterday, vowing to clean up city corruption. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. "Where is it? Agent Miller?" Johnson's voice cut through the night, cold and sharp. "We know you have it. Your friend's life depends on your cooperation. Agent Miller." Marquis stepped out from the shadows, his hands raised in surrender. "The drive is safe." Mark's voice was steady, betraying none of the fear I felt. "If anything happens to me or Alex, it goes public. One of Johnson's thugs let out a humorless laugh. You think we're afraid of your little dead man switch? We own the media. We own the police. We own this city. That's when I saw it, the cold, metallic glint of a gun in Johnson's hand. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an execution. In that split second, my world tilted. Acting on pure instinct, I snatched a rusted metal pipe from the ground and hurled it with all my might. It clattered across the pavement, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the stillness. As the men instinctively turned towards the noise, I grabbed Mark's arm. Run. We ran. We sprinted through the labyrinth of warehouses, the air filled with the terrifying whistle of bullets flying past us. Mark, my quiet, predictable friend, was now a stranger, guiding us with a desperate certainty. He yanked open a rusted door, and we tumbled into the cavernous belly of an abandoned factory. We need to get to my apartment, he panted, shoving a heavy steel bar against the door. That drive is the only thing keeping us alive. But they'll be watching your place. They'll be everywhere. He shook his head, a grim determination set on his face. They think they've already searched it. They tore it apart, but they don't know about the fireplace. As we moved through the factory, our footsteps echoing like ghosts in the vast, empty space, the story finally unraveled. Mark wasn't just my friend. He was an undercover agent. He'd been investigating a massive conspiracy, a web of deceit connecting corrupt city officials and greedy tech companies, all manipulating stock prices and crushing anyone who got in their way. A CO had found out, was about to blow the whistle, and ended up dead. I was meeting him to get the final piece of evidence when they killed him, Mark explained, his voice heavy with guilt. They framed me for it, but the real killer, the one who pulled the trigger, he works for Johnson. We emerged from the other side of the factory into the cool night air. A beat-up pickup truck sat parked under a flickering streetlight, its keys inexplicably in the ignition. It felt like a small miracle in a night of nightmares. As we drove through the sleeping city toward his apartment, I looked at the familiar streets, and they seemed alien. My old life, my simple, ordinary life, was gone. It had vanished in a hail of gunfire and whispered secrets. I was in the game now, a pawn on a board where the rules were constantly changing, and the stakes were life and death. We slipped into Mark's building through the service entrance, our hearts pounding in unison. The apartment was a disaster zone, a testament to the violent search. Furniture overturned, glass shattered everywhere. It looked like a storm had passed through. Mark ignored the chaos, striding directly to the fireplace. His fingers found the loose brick instantly, and he pulled out a small, silver flash drive. This is it, he said, holding it up. It looked so small, so insignificant, yet it held the power to shatter an empire. Names, dates, transactions, everything we need to expose them. But as we turned to make our escape, the apartment door crashed open. Standing in the doorway, framed like a villain in a movie, was Councilman Johnson. His men flanked him, their weapons drawn. A smug, triumphant smile spread across his face. Thank you for leading us right to it, Johnson sneered. Now, if you'll just hand over the drive... Mark stepped forward. For a terrifying second, I thought he was going to surrender. But instead of handing over the drive, he calmly pressed a button on his watch. A small, defiant click. Too late, Mark said, his voice ringing with a newfound authority. I just sent copies to 3 major news outlets. Your operation is finished. Johnson's face contorted with pure, unadulterated rage. Kill them both, he screamed. His men raised their weapons. Time slowed to a crawl. This was Italiano. But before a single shot could be fired, a new voice boomed through the apartment. A voice of order and power. FBI. Drop your weapons. The room was suddenly flooded with federal agents, a whirlwind of tactical gear and drawn firearms. Mark had done it. The moment we'd stepped into the building, he'd triggered a silent alarm, calling in the cavalry. As Johnson and his men were cuffed and read their rights, the chaos finally subsided. Mark turned to me, a weary but victorious look in his eyes. It's over, Alex. We won. I looked at my best friend, This man I'd known my whole life, but felt like I'd just met. Our friendship had been tested, twisted, and pushed to the absolute brink. Some friendships are built on truth. Ours had survived in spite of it, forged in the fires of deception and danger. And in that moment, I knew, without a doubt, that it made our bond stronger than either of us could have ever imagined. Thanks for sticking with me through that insane story. If you love thrillers and tales of suspense, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in my shoes. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. The feeling of relief vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Back at FBI headquarters, you could cut the tension with a knife. We had the flash drive, and it was filled with damning evidence, but it wasn't the slam dunk we needed. Councilman Johnson was already in the process of posting bail, and his army of lawyers was busy painting a picture of political persecution for the media. They have judges in their pocket, Mark said, his face a mask of grim frustration. Johnson will be out by morning, and as soon as he is, we'll be right back in their crosshairs. This time, they won't miss. Special Agent Reyes, Mark's supervisor and a man who looked like he'd seen it all twice, laid out the cold, hard facts. The drive proves financial crimes. Mark, it's solid on money laundering and fraud, but it doesn't connect Johnson to the murder. Without the murder charge sticking, he'll likely get a slap on the wrist, and he'll spend the rest of his life and his considerable resources making your lives a living hell. The weight of his words settled in the room, heavy and suffocating. We were so close, yet so far. My mind raced, replaying every conversation, every detail, searching for something, anything we had missed. And then, a flicker. A memory sparked. "Mark," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "The night of the murder, you told me you were at the building to meet the CEO. Did you see anything unusual? Anyone else there?" Mark's eyes widened, a jolt of recognition passing through them. The security cameras. Of course, the entire building had just installed a brand new state-of-the-art AI security system. It would have recorded everything, every person who came in or out. It was the break we needed. A surge of adrenaline coursed through me. We immediately got on the phone with the building management, our hopes soaring, but they were just as quickly dashed. "I'm sorry, but the system malfunctioned that night," the building manager claimed, his voice a little too smooth, a little too rehearsed. "There's no footage from that evening. A complete system-wide failure. A complete failure." I didn't buy it for a second. As a software engineer, I know how these systems work. They're designed with redundancies upon redundancies. There are always backups. Always. This wasn't a malfunction. This was a cover-up. I knew I couldn't go through official channels. We needed someone on the inside, someone who could bypass the gatekeepers. I pulled out my phone and called in a favor, a big one, from an old college friend. Her name is Chloe, a certified genius who traded her late-night coding sessions for a high-level cybersecurity job. If anyone could find a digital ghost, it was her. While Chloe began her digital excavation, Mark and I decided we couldn't just sit and wait. We had to keep digging into Johnson's operations, follow the money, and see where it led. We dove back into the financial records, cross-referencing names, shell corporations, and offshore accounts. What we uncovered was far more extensive and terrifying than we could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about stock manipulation or lining their own pockets. The conspiracy was deeper, more insidious. They were planning a hostile takeover of the entire city's critical infrastructure. Mark's face went pale as the pieces clicked into place. "That's why?" he whispered, the realization dawning on him. "That's why they killed the CEO. His company developed and controlled the software that runs the power grid, the water systems, the traffic control, everything. He must have refused to give them backdoor access, a way to control the city itself. They weren't just trying to get rich. They were trying to hold an entire city hostage. The murder wasn't just to cover up financial crimes. It was a strategic move in a much larger, more dangerous game. We were no longer just dealing with white-collar criminals. We were up against people who would do anything to seize absolute power. Just as the true scale of their plan began to sink in, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. I answered, my heart pounding. "I found it," she said, her voice low and urgent. The footage wasn't deleted, it was partitioned, encrypted, and buried so deep it almost looked like corrupted data. They're good, Alex, but I'm better. A wave of triumph washed over me. Chloe, you're a lifesaver. Send it over now. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Alex, she said, and the tone of her voice sent a chill down my spine. There's something else. Something on the recording. I think you need to see this for yourself. What could be on that tape that would shake a seasoned cybersecurity expert like Chloe? Whatever it was, the truth of that night was finally within our grasp. I just hoped we were ready for what it would show us. The video feed was live. Mark was meeting the CEO, just as he'd planned. But then the door opened and a third person walked in. My blood ran cold. It was Sarah. My girlfriend of 2 years. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched her pull a silenced pistol from her purse. 2 shots, clean and precise, into the CEO's chest. The man crumpled. Then, with an unnerving calm, she handed the still-warm weapon to a shell-shocked Mark and walked out. I could barely hear Mark's whisper over the roaring in my ears. My God. She set me up. But why? The answer buzzed in my pocket. A text message from Sarah. Alex, if you want to understand, meet me at our spot. Come alone, tell Mark. And Hidayah. Our spot, the bench in Central Park where we had our first date, where we'd shared so many secrets. Or so I thought. My mind was a vortex of betrayal and confusion as I raced to meet her, leaving Mark behind. I had to go alone. She was already there, a silhouette against the city lights, looking as beautiful and composed as the day I met her. I knew you'd come, she said, her voice a soft caress that now felt like a blade. Why, Sarah? The words tore from my throat. Why would you do this? And then she unraveled the lie. I'd been living. Her father, Councilman Johnson, wasn't just a politician. He was a silent partner in a criminal empire. She was his heir, groomed since childhood to run the family business. Dating me, getting close to Mark, it was all a meticulously crafted illusion, a part of their grand design. I never meant to fall in love with you, Alex, she confessed, and for a moment I saw genuine tears welling in her eyes. But now you have a choice. Join us. We can still be together. Think of the wealth. The power, it can all be ours. She pulled a contract from her purse, the paper looking obscene in the soft park lighting. It's a partnership agreement. Your technical expertise, our resources, we could own this city. I stared at the document, then back at the woman I thought I knew, the woman I thought I loved. One question remained. And Mark, what happens to him? Her face hardened, the brief moment of vulnerability gone. He's a liability. He has to disappear. And in that instant, my choice was made. I discreetly activated the recording app on my phone, which had been running since I left headquarters. It was time for a bluff. I know about the backup at the water filtration plant, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, the one you're planning to contaminate to drive up stock prices. Her eyes widened. A flicker of surprise. How did you? I pressed on. Mark and I know everything. The FBI is on their way here right now. It was a desperate gamble, but it paid off. Panic flashed across her face as she reached for her phone. That was the signal. Mark and a team of FBI agents emerged from the shadows of the surrounding trees, their weapons drawn. It's over, Sarah, Mark said, his voice heavy with the weight of our shared betrayal. But Sarah just smiled, a chilling, confident smirk. You have nothing. My father owns people in your office. You'll never even make it to trial. As the agents led her away, her eyes locked with mine one last time. You chose wrong, Alex. You should have taken my offer. Back at headquarters, her words proved prophetic. The system began to eat itself. Evidence vanished from secure servers. Witnesses recanted their statements. The corruption was deeper than we ever imagined. We need to go public, I told Mark, a new sense of urgency fueling me. Now, before it's all gone. With Chloe's help, we bypassed our own compromised systems and unleashed the floodgates. We sent everything, the recordings, the financial data, the surveillance footage to every major news outlet at once. Minutes later, the internet exploded. Councilman Johnson and his daughter were arrested on live television during a press conference. The truth, finally, had won. But the victory felt hollow. It had cost me everything. My relationship, my privacy, my faith in the very system I'd sworn to uphold. Mark got a promotion, a medal. I got death threats and a one-way ticket into witness protection. The last time I saw Mark, he tried to apologize. I never meant to drag you into this, Alex. I shook my head. You didn't drag me. I walked in with my eyes open. That's what friends do. Now, I live in a different city with a different name. The nightmares still visit sometimes, but I sleep a little better, knowing I did the right thing, because some friendships are worth risking everything for. And some loves, well, some loves are just lessons in disguise. And me, I'm still learning the difference. The house was supposed to be safe, a refuge, but for 6 long months, it felt more like a cage. To the world, I was Michael Evans, a run-of-the-mill graphic designer from Ohio. My hobbies, hiking and craft beer. It was a perfectly crafted lie, courtesy of the FBI. A flawless backstory designed to keep me invisible, but with every sunrise, another piece of the real me, of Alex, just. Fadid, Hawaii. The lie was devouring me whole. I was a ghost in someone else's life, haunted by a past I was forced to bury. And then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, the past came knocking. It was Mark. He stood on my doorstep, rain dripping from his coat, looking years older, the weight of the world etched onto his face. The moment our eyes met, the illusion of Michael Evans shattered. We need to talk, Alex, he said, his voice low and urgent. Who's like that? I was pulled back into the storm. My fake life, my fragile peace, it all evaporated in an instant. Mark sat at my kitchen table, the silence heavy between us. He didn't waste time. The corruption, the web of lies we thought we had exposed, was still thriving. It was deeper, more tangled than we ever imagined. Key evidence was buried, he explained, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Witnesses. They've vanished, and Councilman Johnson, he's cutting a deal to play a bargain, a slap on the wrist that would let most of his criminal network slither back into the shadows, untouched. My blood ran cold. The pieces of the puzzle he was laying out formed a picture of utter failure. Then came the final, devastating blow. Sarah turned state's evidence, Mark said, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence for our cause. She's giving up the little guys, the pawns, to protect her father and the heart of the whole operation. They're going to walk, Alex. They're all going to walk away. The room started to spin. All the risks. My career, my friends, my entire life. Everything I had sacrificed. It was all for nothing. A bitter, useless gesture. Just as I was sinking into despair, Mark leaned forward. But there's a chance, he whispered, a flicker of hope in his tired eyes. One last shot. My head snapped up. Sarah wants to meet you. She claims she has information, something that can bring down the entire network, but she says she only give it to you. A laugh escaped my lips, but it was a harsh, ugly sound. You're kidding, right? And you actually believe her? After all this, Mark looked me straight in the eye, his gaze unwavering. No, he admitted, the honesty of it cutting through my anger. I don't believe her for a second. But, Alex, it's the only lead we have left. It's our only move. He was right. It was a desperate, probably foolish gamble. A trap almost certainly laid by the very person who had betrayed us. But it was also the only path forward. The only way to reclaim what they had stolen from me. From all of us. The cafe was a blur of noise and movement. The clatter of cups, a jarring soundtrack to the tension coiled in my gut. It was near the federal courthouse, a bold, almost arrogant choice of location. And there she was. Sarah. She looked fragile. The polished, unshakable woman I remembered was gone. In her place was someone thinner, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her coffee cup. A nervous energy radiated off her, a stark contrast to her usual icy composure. "Alex," she breathed, as I slid into the booth opposite her. "Thank you for coming." The politeness felt absurd, like a line from a play that had gone horribly wrong. I cut her off. "Let's skip the pleasantries. Sarah, what do you want?" Her gaze darted around the crowded room before locking back onto mine. With a shaky hand, she slid a slim, black phone across the polished surface of the table. It felt cold to the touch. "It's all there," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the cafe's din. "Everything. Encrypted bank records, shell company registrations, a list of every single name involved, from the top down." It was the key, the master file we had been chasing from the very beginning. The evidence that could finally burn their entire corrupt empire to the ground. I stared at the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. It seemed too easy. "What's the catch?" I asked, my voice laced with suspicion. She took a deep breath, her composure finally cracking. "My father. They're planning to get rid of him. He knows too much. He's become a liability. They're cleaning house." Her eyes filled with a desperate fear I'd never seen in them before. "This isn't just about justice anymore, Alex. It's about survival." She looked at me, her gaze pleading. "The data on that phone is protected by a biometric lock that only I can open. But I need your help. I need you to get me and my father out. In exchange for our safety, I'll give you everything." The fate of the entire investigation, the chance for real justice, was sitting right there on the table. But it came at a price. Trusting the woman who had already betrayed me once. "Start with a tense, intriguing tone," Sarah claimed her father. A man powerful enough to buy judges and silence police commissioners, had a fortune stashed away in offshore accounts. Take catch. It was locked behind a dual verification system, something only a tech expert could crack. And she wanted me to be that expert. In exchange, she promised, her voice a low murmur across the small cafe table, "I'll testify. I'll bring down everyone. My father, the corrupt officials. ... Everyone." The offer was a dangling thread, a chance to unravel the entire web of corruption I'd been fighting for years. But I'd been down this road before. I knew Sarah. Every deal she made had fine print, hidden costs that could bury you. I leaned forward, my eyes searching hers for a hint of the truth. "Why should I trust you?" After everything, her gaze dropped to the table, and when she looked back up, the hardened facade she always wore had crumbled. "Because I'm pregnant," she whispered, the words barely audible over the clatter of the cafe. "And I don't want my child born into this world. Not this version of it." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. A child. Our child. Before I could even process the thought, before I could ask the flood of questions swirling in my mind, the world exploded. The cafe windows shattered inwards, spraying glass across the room. Gunmen, clad in black, swarmed through the opening. Chaos erupted. People screamed and dove for cover. They were professionals, moving with brutal efficiency. They grabbed Sarah, their hands rough as they shoved her towards the door. My friend, Mark, and his FBI team, who had been providing covert overwatch, moved in instantly. But they were outmanned and outgunned, the air filled with shouting and the deafening report of gunfire. In the heart of the pandemonium, Sarah's eyes found mine. With a desperate flick of her wrist, she threw her phone across the floor. It skittered towards me just as she was dragged out of sight and bundled into a black van that screeched away into the city traffic. Back at the sterile, fluorescent-lit FBI headquarters, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a cold dread. The phone Sarah had thrown me. It wasn't just a burner, it was her personal device, and it held more than just encrypted evidence. It held her journal. For hours, I sat there, scrolling through her life. Page after digital page painted a heartbreaking picture. It detailed her lonely existence as a pawn in her father's criminal empire, a gilded cage she was desperate to escape. She wrote about her fears, her hopes, and her feelings for me. It wasn't a game. It wasn't manipulation. It was real. Her desperation to break free, to protect her unborn child, was genuine. She was telling the truth. I said to Mark, my voice hoarse, "Ol of Italiano. We have to get her back." But we were too late. That evening, the news broke, a cold, impersonal headline scrolling across the screen. Sarah had been killed. A tragic car accident while being transported to a new, secure location. It wasn't an accident. It was an execution, and they made it look like the FBI had failed to protect her. Her death didn't break me. It ignited something, a cold, determined rage. Justice for the city wasn't enough anymore. This was for her. I spent the next 3 weeks locked away with Chloe, our team's best cryptographer. We worked day and night, fueled by coffee and a burning need for vengeance, to crack the final layers of encryption on Sarah's phone. What we found was staggering. This wasn't just about one city's corruption. This was a nationwide conspiracy, reaching into the highest echelons of government. There were plans, detailed and terrifying, to manipulate the country's entire infrastructure, power grids, communication networks, financial markets. They were planning a silent coup, and Sarah had been the key to stopping it. I walked into Mark's office and slapped the drive down on his desk. "We can't just go to the news," I told him, my voice flat and hard. "They'll bury it. They'll call it a conspiracy theory and discredit the source. We need to go bigger. We need to make this so public, so undeniable, that no one can silence it." We mobilized a network we'd built over years: underground activists, trusted independent journalists, and white hat hackers across the globe. We prepared for a digital deed. We mirrored the data on servers in a dozen different countries, used blockchain for verification to prove it hadn't been tampered with, and planned a coordinated multi-wave release. We were going to set the truth free and watch the system burn. The fallout was immediate. It was a digital tsunami. The data went live, and within minutes, it was everywhere. The story didn't just break, it shattered. The news cycle. Councilman Johnson, who had been released on a technicality, was rearrested. He was just the first domino. Dozens of powerful figures, politicians, executives, officials were taken into custody. The story dominated global headlines for weeks, an unrelenting expose of the rot at the core of power. In the end, justice was served. The guilty were prosecuted, the conspiracy dismantled, but the victory felt hollow. The taste of ash in my mouth. I attended Sarah's funeral in disguise, a stranger in the crowd, watching from beneath the shade of a distant oak tree. They buried the woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, and the brave stranger she had revealed herself to be. Her journal had revealed one last, devastating secret. She was 8 weeks pregnant when she died. It was my child. Afterward, Mark found me. He put a hand on my shoulder, his expression grim. "You did it, Alex," he said quietly. "You saved countless lives. You exposed corruption that would have destroyed this country from the inside out." I looked out over the cemetery, the rows of silent stones stretching into the distance. "I know," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "But at what cost?" Today, I run a cybersecurity nonprofit. We help whistleblowers, people like Sarah, expose corruption safely. We give them the tools and the protection they never had. Mark acts as our government liaison, a bridge between the system we once fought and the one we're now trying to build. We've become a part of the machine. But this time, we're working from the inside, trying to make it better, stronger, and more honest. Sometimes, late at night, when the office is quiet and the city sleeps, I pull out the copy I made of Sarah's journal. I read her final entry, the words now etched into my memory. "If you're reading this, Alex, I'm probably gone. But know this, loving you was the only real thing in my life of lies. Our child would have been lucky to have you as a father. Make sure the world we bring children into is worth living in. I'm trying, Sarah. Every single day, I'm trying. The battle may be over, but the war for truth is never. And as long as there are people willing to fight for what's right, there will always be hope. That's the real lesson here, that one person's truth One person's courage can change everything. And that sometimes the most ordinary people are called upon to do the most extraordinary things. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more content like this. Stay safe and never stop questioning.